for a look at how hospitals respond to mass shootings and the role doctors play. I'm joined now by Dr. Cedric Dark. He's an emergency room physician in Houston. Dr. Dark, what do we know right now about the extent of the injuries suffered by these children? Because, again, initial reports by Governor Abbott said a handgun and maybe a rifle, yet the death toll is so high.
Yeah, and thank you very much for having me on. It would be improper for me to speculate about the injuries of people that I have not seen or the patients I have not seen. And again, I'm in Houston, I'm not in Uvalde. But I would say that, you know, and for those of us from the medical community that have been dealing with the issue of gun violence for years, I just wanted to express our condolences to the families of people that are not only impacted by the injuries sustained, but especially the folks whose children are deceased, and that also includes the parents of school teachers.
We do want to let viewers at home know that President Biden is set to speak at any minute, and when he comes out to speak, we will go to him in its entirety. But for right now, Dr. Dark, when it comes to gunshot wounds, which I'm guessing in emergency medicine, unfortunately, you probably see every day, is there a difference in how you would treat, say, a wound from a handgun versus something like a rifle?
It certainly would be a difference between the damage that you would see from a handgun versus a rifle, and it has to deal with several different things. Number one is the caliber of the bullet. The larger the bullet, the more damage it inflicts, but also the main factor is going to be the speed of the bullet as it proceeds from the gun. Handguns usually are lower velocity compared to rifles, and when we're talking about the kinetic energy that's being transferred from the bullet to the person, that speed, that velocity is actually squared. And so if you have a similar size projectile being launched from either a handgun versus a rifle, the rifle might actually provide about 9 to 10 times as much force onto the person, which can lead to significantly more damage. This is why when we see school shootings or other mass shooting events that take place with certain weapons like centerfire rifles or assault weapons, depending on what people want to call them, you tend to see the carnage is a lot more than what we would otherwise see with what I tend to notice in my daily work, the daily trickle of gun violence, which is handgun violence, that happens in the streets of our cities.
I've read reports that, you know, this is not a major area. Uvalde has 16,000 residents. It's probably not a level 1 trauma center, which would be necessary, not to mention capacity issues in a trauma bay. If the children had to be airlifted, which I understand is the case, does that make a difference in being able to save lives?
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that full statement. If you would be able to repeat that for me, please.
If victims have to be airlifted rather than taken around the corner right to, you know, next door as in a major city at a great trauma center, does that elapse time? Does that make a difference in the end of how many lives you can save in this situation?
Yeah, there's definitely a factor that we call the golden hour of trauma, where it is very important that we deal with patients and their injuries as soon and as rapidly as possible. And in events such as this, where you have a situation where your hospitals are stretched thin and they are entering sort of a mass casualty situation, it can be extraordinarily difficult as to how your resources are utilized. This is, you know, one of those situations where if, you know, any local hospital were overwhelmed by the number of people that could be sent to them, it would certainly be a difficult task for the physicians and the nurses and the other personnel that are trying to care for those patients.
Dr. Dark, you are in Texas. You spend every single day trying to save lives in your hospital. Gun violence is on the rise in the country. I just wonder if you have any words to leave us with.
I mean, I think that it's really important for us to realize this. Firearms are the number 1 killer of children and young people in the United States right now. It's something that's overtaken motor vehicle accidents, and the reason it's done that is because we've used public health measures to improve the safety of motor vehicles by adding seat belts and anti-lock brakes and preventing things like drunk driving. We've not done the same efforts, whether it's from the public health perspective, the policy perspective, or even culturally as a society to improve the safety of things like firearms. Again, I'm actually a gun owner. I have guns in my house. They're locked. They're kept away from my child so that he is not able to access them. And a lot of my colleagues like to go shooting. Some of my colleagues, emergency physicians and trauma surgeons, either have AR-15s or concealed carry licenses. So it's not that we're out here trying to take guns away from people. We just want to make whatever recreational sport that people enjoy, whether it's target shooting, whatever, safer, so that their children are killed, or so that I can tell you for a fact that things like child access prevention laws are one of the most effective laws that we have available on the books, but they're only available in about 2/3 of the states across this country. And so if we're going to have effective gun laws, things that will and have been proven and demonstrate that you can get rid of unintentional injuries, that you can reduce firearm assaults, that you can reduce things like suicide. Child access prevention is one of those laws that we need to get passed throughout this country and not just in a fraction of the states.
From Texas tonight, Dr. Cedric Dark, emergency medicine physician in Houston. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.